Hello, everyone. So there's been another call between Trump and Zelensky as there is another round of talks coming up. And most analysts agree that the fifth year of full-scale invasion of Ukraine is not starting too hot for Russia. So what is going on? What is this unpopular option everyone is talking about? It's not what you all think and hope. Well, not all of you probably, but a lot. It's like, is he going to pull back? Is he going to concoct some kind of a lie that he had won the war anyway and somehow ended? No. I'm sorry to say that is not the one. His suggestion, Putin's suggestion, is the mandatory reserve call-ups because of the high casualties. So what does that mean? Well, this is something that actually tracks back all the way to the Soviet Union. So in the Soviet Union, military service for men was mandatory. There were some exceptions, like they could go to college after school and finish college and then do the army service, or they could go and serve in the army straight out of school or in the middle of college. So there were options. But anyway, 2 years. That was the duration. And then, basically, once they were finished with the 2-year army service, they were considered to be reserves, all of them, up until they reached a certain age. And so basically the law was that at the time of war, the government could call up all of the reservists or parts of the reservists, portions depending on like the need. Because that could be a possibility, there were like a reservist refresher training courses every so many years. I'd have to ask my dad because he would know this better. So basically give them like a little bit of a retraining in like first aid, rudimentary combat, shooting, that type of thing. So this is what Putin is talking about. He's talking about basically grabbing the guys who had served in the army but are not professional soldiers. They didn't sign up for this. They're currently in civilian jobs of some sort. And so he talks about grabbing them from wherever they are and sending them to the front. This measure is hugely unpopular with people in Russia for obvious reasons. So we'll see how that goes. Even that, I don't think, can initiate any type of overthrow of this government. But like I said, we'll see how that goes. But this is the unpopular option that is being mentioned by multiple news sources. Orban in Hungary continues to basically run his own propaganda campaign in Ukraine. He says he's concerned that Ukraine might attack Hungary. What? First of all, in case you hadn't noticed, Ukraine is a little bit busy right now, stretched a little thin. But anyway, he says that he's going to deploy soldiers and equipment to protect key energy infrastructure because he's afraid of the Ukrainian threat. What the fuck? Of course, what I'm thinking about is that he might be trying to orchestrate something with his friend Putin and then blame Ukraine, because that's been done before. But this is complete horseshit. We do have some decent news in terms of weapons productions. We talked about this in the past. So that Ukraine was working actively with the UK, France, and Germany to move the drone production, or at least supplement the drone production with the factories abroad. And so the first such factory is starting production in the UK. What does that mean? Why is that important? Again, this is something I mentioned in the past. Imagine any product development cycle, any product, anything. Design, creating engineering drawings, creating a prototype, testing the prototype, improvements of the prototype, subsequent adjustments to the design, and then the assembly design, and then finally running a test of the assembly and starting to actually manufacture these things, whatever they are. Now imagine doing all of that while you have constant pummeling by glide bombs, missiles, and drones. Not a fun process. So what Ukraine is doing basically is collaborating with its allies, because no doubt they're deriving some benefit from this because they have a free design cycle handed to them already, because all of the hard work has been done. Ukrainians have already designed their drones. They already know how they are assembled. They already know how to test them, how to operate them, all of that. So now whoever gets to house their factories gets all of that, gets to learn from all of that, gets to collaborate with Ukrainian engineers, which is a huge benefit to whoever it is, to their military-industrial complex. And in order to target those factories, Russia would have to target the EU or NATO territory. Big difference. This is a big story that is circulating. Another corruption scandal. This is a recent one that's been exposed in the aircraft shelter protection project. And the culprit is an Air Force logistics commander. And his accomplice is the head of the regional directorate of the Security Service of Ukraine. So this is huge. Both these men were basically caught red-handed while trying to literally transfer money illegally to their own accounts. So the investigation is ongoing. And again, to people who are going to say, well, see, Ukraine is corrupt. Show me one country that has no corruption, especially in the higher level of government. I'll wait. No, I'm not going to wait because I haven't got that kind of time for that kind of bullshit. There isn't one. Existence of corruption in a nation is not an excuse to invade it, and it's not an excuse to indiscriminately murder its civilians. And then there is this story, and I kind of had to chuckle in a very sort of sad way. It says, Russia's war in Ukraine puts women off having children. You think? And that's been the case actually both in Ukraine and in Russia. So Putin has been actually trying to push Russian women to have big families, like really big families. We're talking about 7 or 8 children. But for some reason, women haven't taken him up on that. There have been promises of, financial incentives and so on and so forth. But so far, not really, not interested. And the birth rates are declining. And yeah, Ukrainian women don't want to have children either. Because look at how many times Russia had targeted hospitals, maternity wards, doctors' offices, children's playgrounds, kindergartens, schools, etc. Why would any woman in her right mind want to have a child if her child could be killed by a Russian ballistic missile at any point? That's not exactly a whim. And yes, it is a demographic catastrophe too, in addition to all of the other problems Ukraine is facing. More to come.